I'm going to go over how to record to a multi-track session in this tutorial. There are 4 different things you can do in a multi-track session when you're recording. You can record a single file to a single track. You can record over an existing file in a track. You can record multiple channels at once, like 2 different vocalists or multiple instrumentalists, to multiple tracks, channeling each individual instrument or vocalist to individual tracks. And then finally, you can record a track to an existing recording session where you can hear the existing audio and then record as you're listening to it, as you're monitoring it. We're going to go over all 4 different things here. Before we get rolling, you should open up these files. So just open up the 2 different multi-track session files, 7.1 and 7 multitrack 2. Open those guys up. And then go to the narrations folder and open up the Gettysburg unedited file. All right, the first order of business is I want you to save the multitrack 1 session to your Scratch folder, the folder that you made at the beginning called My Audition Exercise Files, if you created it. If not, you can do that now. Go File, Save As. We want to save this as a different name so we know which one we're working with. We'll call it Updated. And we're going to save it not to the working files, but we're going to save it to the folder that you created, whatever you named it, if you named it at all. If you didn't, you can just put this file someplace besides inside the working files folder. We're going to put it inside My Audition Exercise Files. There's a reason for that, and I'll show you that reason in a little bit. So now we got this guy ready to go. The way I created this was by going File, New, Multitrack Session, and instead of taking the default No Template approach, I took the Empty Stereo Session template. So there are no files to begin with, no tracks to begin with. And I right-clicked here and said Track, Add a Mono Audio Track, and did that twice to add 2 mono audio tracks. All right, now we're ready to record to one of these tracks. I'm going to check to make sure that I'm actually getting audio to the track by clicking on this button here called Arm for Record. And now you can see my mic is bouncing the view meter, which is a good thing. So we're ready to go. I'm going to click this little record button down here, and when I do that, it's going to start recording to that track, and it's going to record a clip in that track. And when I'm done, I'll just click on the stop button or press the space bar, and we're done recording it. And now the cool thing that happens in the multi-track session is that when you record something to a multi-track session, it doesn't go to some temporary folder as a temporary file. It goes to a very specific folder in the place that you've designated, and it's already saved there. It's saved there under a name based upon the track. It's called Track 1, Take 1, essentially. That's inside that place where you save this file. There's a folder there now. As you record things, all the recorded things show up in that folder. And that's a good thing because these guys are not going to disappear into the ether if you close this thing down. Or if you record over it, the old ones will still remain there. So that's good. I'm going to get rid of this guy by deleting it from the multi-track track. And I'm going to actually delete it from here too. And it won't go away. It's not a temporary file. It's on your hard drive. So just deleting it here did not delete it from the hard drive. Now I'm going to record over an existing file, which sounds horrible. We don't want to delete what's here, but we can record over it in the place where there's audio there that I want to record over, and it won't replace it. It'll just layer it on top of it if I want to, let's say, change the nature of the audio there. So the nature of the audio at that spot goes to something like this. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here, have consecrated it far above our... Something along those lines. And so I'm going to record over that. So we've armed this for recording. We're ready to go. I'm going to click record here. And when it gets to that white area, that's when the actual recording begins. It won't record here. It records only there. And it won't delete what's there. I can just read the same line over that. So when it gets to that point, I can start recording now. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here, have consecrated it far above our poor power to add or detract. I'm going to stop. And if I listen to that, it'll be 2 things at once. Now, the brave men, living and dead, that's what I just added. And that file will show up down here. I can look at it. Right here, this is what is recorded there. This is the now at the beginning. Now, the brave men, living and dead. And if I like that instead of what was there before, I can replace that inside the multi-track session. But the original file, the Gettysburg unedited, was untouched, which is a good thing. All right, let's move on. Go back to that session. I'm going to delete this thing that I just did. First of all, just take care of this Gettysburg file and get rid of this selection, and then delete that file. And then I'm going to click on this and remove that from the multi-track session. Now I want to record 2 tracks at once. And to do that, I need to hook up an interface that is multi-channels. And when I hook it up, there might be a little bit of echo in the room here, so I'm not going to do that for very long. So I'm going to put this on pause, and then we're going to hook that up. Hang on a second. All right, I've just hooked up a couple of microphones to an interface, and you can sort of hear the echo in the background of those two microphones. They're turned way down, but they're still picking up a little bit of audio. So the first thing I need to do is I need to tell this multi-track session to switch to those microphones. So I can click this little default stereo input flyout and click audio hardware. That takes me to preferences and takes me to the audio hardware section of preferences directly. So I need to go to here and change to Elise's Firewire. That's the interface that I hooked up. Now I need to click OK. And I'm going to now tell this track 1 to have the input come from channel 1 of that device that I hooked up. It's a 26 channel device. There's a microphone there. I'm going to have this be the second microphone, microphone number 2 and channel number 2. And I'll demonstrate that they're both there by just tapping on them. Here's 1, and here's 2. I need to keep them down so there's not too much echo. And now when I hit record here, I've got them both armed for recording. When I click record, each track will be recorded separately. This is 1. Here's 2. All right, now I'll stop it. And I'm going to pause again while I unplug these guys. All right, now we're back, and I've unplugged these microphones so that you won't hear any more echo. I'm going to go back and play these guys. Before I do that, I need to switch back to the default audio that I had before. So I switch back to my sound card, and it should take care of that. Now I'll be able to hear this stuff in the right and left channels. Here we go. Here's the mic 1 and mic 2. So I recorded 2 separate channels to 2 different tracks, which I can then mix later. I can pan them left and right. I can apply effects, obviously, to my little tap, tap, tap. That's not really worth anything, but then you get a sense of how that works. Okay, now the final thing, and that is the sort of more complicated thing, and that is how do you record to an existing session like this? You want to record, let's say, down here in track 5. And this really is directly dependent on the hardware that you've hooked up. And I'm not going to go through the whole process, but I will kind of give you a sense of how to set it up. You want to be able to take all the tracks that you've got here, all the musical tracks or vocalists or whatever you've got, and put them to a bus. Here it's called bus A. And so you route them to a bus. So you create a new bus track. I'll talk about bus tracks and that kind of stuff when I talk about multi-track sessions much later in these tutorials, but just to give you a sense of how that works, you right-click anywhere here, look under track, it'll say add a stereo bus track, and I did that. That's this bus track here. Then you take all the pre-recorded stuff that you've got and route their output. This little arrow means out. So instead of going to the master, which is where almost all things go normally, I want this guy to go to the bus, and bus A is the one that we added. So every other one goes to bus A. See how they all go to bus A there? All going to bus A. And then bus A, I would route that one to the Firewire interface that I've got hooked up. So let me just show you how that works. Even though I unplugged the microphones, let me just turn this guy back on and we'll show you how that works. So I would route this output, not to the master. I would route it to the interface. And I would say, let's go to the left channel on the interface because I got the bus panned all the way to the left. So every single audio file here is going to be in the left speaker. Now you can see them bouncing the view meter, but because I just sent it to the interface, it's no longer going into the computer. You can't hear it, but it's going to the headset hooked up to the interface. Now I take this track here that I'm going to record to, and I pan it to the right so that even though I can hear the audio in the left channel with the headset on, as I record it, I can hear myself in the right channel, and I would have the output for that guy go to the right channel on the interface. So I'd hear myself as I sing or record an instrument in the right channel in my right ear, and I would hear the rest of the instruments that are already there in the left, and then I would record to this track, and then I'd be able to record in time with the existing music. So I know it's kind of complicated, and it really is dependent on your hardware, and if you've got the kind of interface that can do this, then you probably have the knowledge about audio to understand the basic process how to do that. And now that you see that you need to create a bus track and route things left and right and to that bus, then I think you get a sense of how you can record to an existing studio session. So there you have it. 4 different things you can do, 4 different ways you can record to a multi-track session in Audition.